Breathe, Think, Love is a podcast showcasing an innovative approach to health and healing beyond the walls of mainstream medicine. Your hosts, Suzanne and Jason, will unveil how we harmonize scalar energy, lymphatic system, and bioelectricity of the body for a holistic preservation of our spirit and soul from a modern roots modality. The intertwining of the triunity of our being unleashes immeasurable power, especially amplified in nature, and will prove to be organically expansive in community. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you again for tuning in and making the time to pay attention to myself and Jay. Jason, you're doing wonderful today, yeah?
Always.
Fantastic.
Living the dream.
Excellent. It's raining outside, and how appropriate.
Rain or shine, I love it.
Because how appropriate.
I don't live my life by the weather.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk.
It's all good for me.
Our last podcast, we touched on the super water fast, and I think I mentioned structured water, deuterium depleted water.
Yeah, we're getting into the water.
Yeah, so it's
a rabbit hole.
Right, and we're gonna
having that conversation more and more with people these days. A lot of people are waking up to the fact that the water story is a lot deeper than what people have been led to believe, right? Including myself.
Right. So we're going to do a bit of fun facts about water, okay? Just maybe 3 or 4, okay? So most people drink water, and it's known as the chemical structure of H2O, you know, and so seeing that that's what people are familiar with as far as the water that they're intaking, most people don't know that that's not the kind of chemical structure that the body uses to hydrate itself. So the body uses what's known chemically as hydroxide or living water, or the chemical structure is H3O2. So when this asymmetrical bonding occurs between hydrogen and oxygen molecules in the H3O2 structure, what happens to the water, it turns into H3O2, it creates a fourth phase, right? And it basically is a crystallized state. And so on the screen, you'll see that crystal, that beautiful structure.
Frozen form.
Right?
Yeah.
It looks like a snowflake, you know. Mm-hmm. And when water is structured this way, now it behaves more like a gel. So basically the water that's inside our cells is not H2O, it is H3O2. So, you know, how do we turn water that way? Infrared rays can change water to its structured form. You know, when you actually fruits. So fruit contains structured water. So in this form, in its gel form, it holds in the fiber. It basically holds in the fiber and the nutrients that make the fruit so nutritious. So in other words, you hydrate yourself better than liquid drinking water. So what else? What other benefits does H3O2 have?
It gets structured by moving through like rivers and stuff too. I think you had mentioned before too, right?
That's right.
So there's different processes to structure it.
Yeah. So if you imagine, no, it's true.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me.
So in nature, it always amazes me because it ties back to my nature realm, and I make the association because a lot of the structured water that we don't get in the city, you get it in the forest or in the wild without even knowing it.
So water is structured, if you're talking about the outside or the wild, the sun structures water. Mm-hmm. So you want to put water in a glass, maybe put a cover on top of it just so to protect it from outside people, outside things, right? Mm-hmm. But like you could leave it and just have it sit by the window and just have it be exposed to sun.
Does that go with
10,
the moon
15
too?
minutes?
I've heard this from the moon. I don't know if it's the same thing, but
Well, infrared rays is what structures the water.
Right.
So at night, it's also really rich in infrared light.
Right. Interesting.
So what happens also is in structured form, water contains lower surface tension. So this causes it to attract more nutrients. So by doing so, it carries more nutrients into your cells. So it's really cool.
So cool.
Right? Yeah. So in other words, if you want to hydrate with H3O2, you can vortex it like you were saying. So there's some technology out there that you'll see. It looks like a mixer or a shaker. Mm-hmm. So that idea of vortex, that's what you can use or do to structure your water. And it's really a brain power booster. So yeah, so that's a little bit there. Interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, water has always fascinated me because it goes from gas to liquid to a solid to, it changes forms, right? Yeah. It can be invisible, it can be visible.
So you can imagine.
And we're like mostly water.
Oh yeah.
Human beings, right? So it's interesting.
So you can imagine when we do our fasting and we not just use a regular, like water that's been through such a journey where we don't remember. There's research out there, Dr. Emoto, and he highlights, he shows that water does have memory.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that.
We don't really think about the water that comes from the tap.
First Nations have talked about that for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now if we take that idea and apply it to the human body, and I talk a lot about the lymphatic system. So it's the same thing with the lymphatic system. So this slide highlights what's termed also as watershed. Mm-hmm. So you can see even from a physical bodily perspective, you'll see that there's a certain flow where lymph fluid flows towards and to.
From the top down.
Yeah, well, you'll see it right there in the lowest pressure point there, the drainage point. That's really the root cause of congestion, if you want to put it that way, is right by the clavicles or collarbones right there. You'll see it. So all of that flows back towards that and back in towards the heart. Really interesting. So, there's a lot of...
answers are in plain sight.
Think about it. Back then, there's no such thing as microscopes and stuff like that. And I guess more so in modern times that we're here, we're sort of, a lot of our science is based off of something that you see, something of a visual, right?
Tangible, yeah.
Yeah. So back then, it's really nothing different back then, except what they had back then was nature.
Yeah.
So if you want to understand how your body works inside, the creator.
The answers were in plain sight in nature.
Right. So all one had to do before was observe nature, observe the trees, the sun rising, the sun setting, the animals, how the birds behave.
That's what I talk about all the time. Yep.
And
interesting. It's true.
So if you look at that then we can't deny that there's a relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, between nature and ourselves. So if you look at, I really like to highlight this again. We referred to this in the past, but the heart's electromagnetic field. Mm-hmm. And so you can see that it is by far the most powerful rhythmic field produced by the human body, which is the heart's electromagnetic
field. The golden ratio, right?
Exactly.
All these symbols in nature that relate to this concept.
So there's this idea of this spiral look, right?
This energy, yeah.
That
spiral.
Patterns.
They say everything's a circle in life, right?
Oh yeah, it's called the circle of life.
Even nests of birds, everything's made in like a circle. It's kind of...
Absolutely.
It's kind of cool, eh? Right?
And, if you look at the word relationship, and Jay knows this about me, that I like to, if one takes joy in journeying or maybe going for a walk in the forest and observing the beauty of what you behold, you know, to me, I like to look at words and inspect words and introspect words a little bit more. So when it comes to words, I like to go back to the original, like it's called the etymology, where it really rooted from. And so if I look at the word relationship, and one, it's very simple. All you do is go to Google and put relationship and you put the word etymology, right? So
She does do
you
this.
go into deep depth.
It's interesting though.
And it just gives you a deeper appreciation of things. So for example, the word things, okay? Most people, it's like probably one of those overused words, right? But the etymology of thing is actually assembly. See? Imagine that. Assembly, really?
Yeah, so we're not using
Everything, like assembling, right? It's pretty
So
cool.
what is it for relationship?
So
I
relationship
haven't heard this one from
is
you.
derived from relation, makes sense?
Yeah.
And the word ship, right? So relation itself comes from the Latin word relatio or relatio. And what it means is to bring back, to restore, a report, proposition, and yeah, it basically means to bear back, to bring back. And if you look at the word ship, obviously the first thing that probably you'd come to the surface of your mind is ships, right? Seagoing vessel. And that's one, definition when you do the Google search. A ship, boat, right? But it also
Maritime
means
law.
Yeah.
Autonomous.
Okay.
Maritime law doesn't apply to most things, so you're kind of autonomous when you're on the water. So a
That's
relationship, you're autonomous
Yeah.
with yourself and with somebody else, I guess.
Well, that's
I just
really
thought
good.
of that. I don't know, just since you're breaking it down.
Okay, I like that
Just came to me.
we'll get back to the autonomous. I like that, the autonomy that you mentioned there. So ship also means quality, condition, skill, office, position. So now there's this idea now. So when you look at the word relationship, so now there's this idea of going back, restoring, remembering. Remembering what? The quality of maybe life, the perfect condition that once existed. Maybe remembering the power, the innate power that we have, the skills that our ancestors had that was passed down, and remembering our original position maybe, and the office, right, that we once held. Because right now we all look to, and we're all, there's this idea of government. So, and you can even see the word mental in the word govern. So you see the government is actually governing your mentality.
Drew's loving this over here.
So,
We should get a camera and a mic for you.
right? So, and why am I talking like this? Why? This is a little bit of a plug-in of what you can expect when you do a retreat with us.
It's funny that you talk like this, because that brings you right back to my keepers of the wild, because we are the keepers. They aren't the keepers of us, right?
Right. Yes. We have to look at and study our relationship.
With everything.
Now, most of, we have been wired or maybe programmed, let's put it that way, it's probably a better term, to be looking externally always, to be observing outside of ourselves, others, always comparing ourselves to others.
Seeking something outside of ourselves.
Yeah, you said it rightly there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a part of the flow at some point. But first and foremost, it's really important that we understand our relationship with ourselves. So even in that relationship, seagoing vessel. So we should be first focusing on the relationship we have with this vessel, because there's a part of us. So I like to study ancient text. I know people who know me, who's listening to me right now, knows that I love studying the Bible, right? So there's a scripture in Isaiah that I love it because it says something pretty cool. And there's different versions of the Bible. I just picked this one because I like this one. So we all have to take a moment and feel our souls. And that's the problem, right? The world has us very numbed. We're numb. Is that even like we're?
You're going to get me going on a tangent soon,
right? From a pain perspective, they don't like us to feel pain. When we experience setbacks and disappointments and rejection from our relationships, from our parents, from our sisters, from friends, everyone, we look at that and we like don't know what to do anymore. It's like, we go in depression mode, and we just sometimes we I don't know, end our lives. I don't know, but like we have to take a moment and feel, because we all have souls. Okay, the second that we were conceived in our mother's womb, the soul started to record, right? So a part of the soul is our memories, and everything that from conception, we actually started to record. And some people are so good at that they remember what it was like in their mother's womb. Can you imagine? Yeah, there's testimonies of people out there. But in Isaiah, it says, and it's talking about the soul here. So it says, have waited expectantly for you. It says, I wonder who that is. Your name, even your memory, or the remembrance of you, right? Of your name, it says. That is the desire and the deep longing of our souls. So there's this idea of remembering, kind of like this relationship thing, to go back, right? So your name, so if you look at the word name again, Name, you turn that around, forget the E, it's a man. So remember mankind. So inside of us, there is already something that's deeply embedded that needs to be sparked and activated and put on, on a blaze again. Awakened.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting more and more that the more and more I go into observing people's health journeys and, even how our emotions are managed, and we can draw from different technologies and biohacking tools and all these things. But in the end of the day, the cells or ourselves, our soul simply wants to feel. It wants to feel. And the problem is and it's not, how do I say it? We have this thing called ego, right? And that ego at some point was not present. There was no such thing as ego at some point.
So many things I want to say as we're going along here.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to let you talk. Yeah, right. We've talked about this so many times, right? In depth. That so many people put a mask on for the world, right? Because we're expected to in this construct that we live in.
Yeah.
So it's almost like part of the disconnection from what we're supposed to be and what we're pushed to be in our societies, right? These masks are the biggest barriers to people fulfilling their purpose, for connecting with themselves and their soul, and truly connecting with what am I supposed to be doing here on this earth walk, on this journey we're all on. So many people, or I see and feel right now, have no purpose, right? And that's a little part of what we're doing too with our Harmony Homestead and everything that we're doing, right? Is trying to awaken people to some of this stuff, right?
So even that question, what am I supposed to be doing, right? What's my purpose? We already know that. The problem is we don't know how to hear that still small voice that constantly is teaching us and guiding us. And so when ego is present, we can't hear that still small voice. So we're supposed to
too busy putting the mask on.
Yes. So that ego, how it's
trying
birthed,
to be somebody else.
How it's birthed, how it's nurtured and matured is because of everything external of us. Put it that way.
Because you're seeking approval for your mask.
But think about it. The soul simply wants to breathe. And you know what? Like I said, that ego at some point wasn't there. Yeah. And somewhere between 0 to 7 in the age of very, very key programming years, very, very vulnerable stage and very programmable stage of children of us, is when that ego is almost seeded into our consciousness, maybe, if you want to put it that way. But the point is, we live our lives most of the time actually caring for this ego so much. And, you know, and we don't understand that life is really a concentration of light, right? So that's energy. We don't understand that we were designed, our vessels are designed to actually produce sunlight, right? So our cells, the mitochondria, what it does is reverses what the chlorophyll does. So chlorophyll captures sunlight, and then at some point that turns into glucose or fatty acids, and then our mitochondria turns that back into sunlight. So we're actually supposed to be shining.
I'm shining.
As bright as 10,000 times. 10,000, you know, Dr. Zach Bush would say 10,000 times more than the sun. Each of your cells, because each cells have at least, 200 mitochondria? And then your neurons have 2,000 mitochondria? Yeah. So a female egg has 500,000 mitochondria. So think about that for a second. So a mitochondria, by the way, is a bacteria. So my point is that bacteria of mitochondria, the glucose that we intake needs to make it to the mitochondria. That's where the problem happens. There's a breakdown in the process of feeding that mitochondria.
Some people are sitting there trying to Google all of this right now. Like, what is she talking about? I just got lost.
Right? So my point is the ego, when the ego is present, guess what, everyone? It takes up a lot of that energy.
It's distraction.
And that is why a lot of times the root cause. So why are we talking like this? Because when we do our retreat, we're not just going to stare at each other and drink water.
Yeah, I got something to say.
Right?
Well, this is part of the design of our retreat, and the reason it's based in an off-grid location in the bush because of what I've shared and what we've shared together. Like, being in nature forces you to take off the mask. When you're in nature, it doesn't care who you are. It'll humble you very quickly, right? And when you're out there, you don't have anybody to impress. It's like it's stripped away because you're in a different environment. Yeah. You start to see it when you spend a lot of time there, or you bring other people there, because there's a lot of things that come into play. The true person is really revealed when they get out there, especially when they got to sit with themselves. That's when the mask comes off, and that's when they have to sit quietly with themselves. You remove the noise. So coming back to being in nature for the retreats, not only the scalar energy fields that are naturally created out there, but there's a lot of the sounds that are created are healing. Everything has a purpose out there. It's like magic almost. So it really is part of the healing. A lot of people go to the bush to feel better or to heal. And I've seen it over the years. So it's definitely part of our package, if you will, all encompassing to return people to,
So what happens, the difference is when you're indoors, you're surrounded by dead things. Think about it. Yeah, so if you look at your picture frames, we have trees, right, that are static. The trees look like that for 20 years.
Or fake plants.
Okay, and then a lot of times what do you call it? The drywalls. So when you're in nature, all of a sudden everything's moving around you.
It's natural, yeah.
Okay, so the wind, the trees, the sun, there's birds,
No
there's
blue light.
insects, whether we like it or not, there's mosquitoes, but everything's moving. And life has to do with moving.
But even those are good for you too. They increase your immune system, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
it
people
does
are
cause
washing
stress.
their hands
Yeah,
with antibacterial soap all the time. They're never exposing themselves to any dirt or any animals.
Right.
I almost never get sick, right?
Right. So this idea of having a relationship first with ourselves, okay, is we first and foremost, by simply surrounding yourself with movement, okay, and negatively charged ions. See, if you want to be healthy, concentrate yourself with negative charge. Okay, so the air outside is negative charge. When I'm doing treatments, I don't have to plug this in because people don't understand. I even like when we're doing the tools, the tools that I use, the bioelectric tool that I use, that donates negative electric charge to you, right? Negatively charged field. But the point is, when you start to observe nature, okay, so let's call her Mother Earth, right? So, and remember, our soul's desire is to remember. So nature, Mother Earth, one of its purpose is to help us remember, right? To help us remember. But then there's a relationship.
We're all interconnected.
So when we stand in front of a tree or, hug the tree or touch the tree, we're supposed to be remembering, and consciously we may not because we're so busy with TikToks and modern things. But here's the thing, our cells resonate with that. You know what? You want to try it? Go right now and try not to think about TikTok or anything like that. Just clear your mind. Go somewhere and touch a tree. Just touch it with your most prominent hand and just feel the energy, the vibration. You will feel it.
It's so funny. People look at a tree and they're like, it's just a tree. But I'll take you into the bush, and before I go, I'll say, especially if you're not really a bush person, I'll say, what do you see? And people, I see a bunch of trees, whatever. You like that? Because after we go for a walk, you're not going to see it the same, right?
Right.
And people that have schooled me over the years and opened my eyes at a young age about this stuff has said the same things to me, right? I could take you in front of a tree, and there's even books written about this. A really good one is called The Sacred Tree. And there's so much, I keep saying there's all the answers of Creator right there in nature, hidden right in front of you. All the answers are there. Just like a lot of things that'll cause you an ailment in nature, the remedy is usually within eyesight of that same thing. It's pretty interesting, but this riddle of all of these things, the tree has a lot of knowledge to give to people. Mm-hmm. As above, so below. Usually what you see, the size of the tree above ground, it's just as big underground. Mm-hmm. And if you really go in, especially if you look at this book, there's so much tied to the tree, hidden knowledge that's there for you, but most people just see a tree. Yeah. And then the different trees and the medicines and there's so much more in what you're talking about. You feel a tree and go, you can tell direction by a tree just by the side, which side the leaves are more on, or the moss. Or when you spend time with these things, you start connecting with them, just like everything in life. And that's a big part of the problem that we're talking about. You're so disconnected with creation that we're meant to live in. That's the reason that you're not, you're not following your path, because you're disconnected. You're too busy watching TikTok. You're too busy with noise. You're not in nature. You're not in the light. You're not in the moon. You're not by the fire,
And this is why...
Spend time with the animals. They'll talk to you. You think I'm crazy, but they do.
So the creation has an essence and character to them. And again, their purpose is to help us remember our relation right? Ship with ourselves. Now, here's the thing. Here, let's flip it. What about the tree or the plants, the animals? What is our purpose to them? Because it's a relationship. How do I know that? You just look around, right? Look at nature. There's similarities in patterns. There's this toroidal energy that exists in a submolecular level. So do you know what our purpose is to them? Very simple. The trees are looking to be loved. They're looking for lovers. So what happens is, this has been scientifically proven. And you know this for pet lovers, those who have multiple pets, when you're pulling into the driveway, your pet's going crazy. It wants you back. It can't wait for you to come in through those doors. Same thing with plants. Did you know that plants can detect you 2 kilometers away? And the plants that you end up planting and seeding and nurturing, and you decide for some reason to go away from it and just have somebody else to take care of it, the plants aren't happy.
Yeah, they've run tests on like this, studies where you love the plants and they grow better. You play the good high vibration, loving kind of frequencies of music. They grow better.
You want to get a tree excited? You go up to a tree and you literally say, "Man, you're beautiful. You're stunning." And that tree will get so excited.
When they say that everything is interconnected, this is the lesson that's trying to be taught to you by the universe, is that you are the tree, you are the animals, you are everything, and they are you. Everything is, we are one. So what you do to the tree or how what you put out the universe comes back to you. All of these concepts.
Yes.
It really is that way.
Yeah. Right.
And you're learning something every time you connect to something, because everything has a gift or a piece of knowledge for you. And a lot of people just aren't listening to it, right? They're not, this kind of talks mumbo jumbo, right? But when they discover this, I love guiding people to, not that I'm somebody special, but like, it's really cool stuff when you show people this and they go down the rabbit hole and they're like, it changes them. They're like, you're real. That's real. Like, I've experienced this now, what you're talking about. And I'm like, right, you're welcome. Go have fun. Right. Like,
so in a sense, what we're called to do, and especially we'll highlight and we'll really embark on this in our retreats, we're called to do to help us remember, okay, our soul's desire. And at the same time, we're contributing to the earth's seeking for lovers, right? So now if you look again, relationship wise, and this is just a brief, like you saw on the slides, the golden ratio and how that's very, very, the patterns are very much the same. When it comes to the human body, actually, and I'll show you in a little bit.
That rings with the wood,
right?
Yeah.
And just a brief
Answers
thing there.
Are in plain sight.
Like if you look at that spiral, that dome shaped, if you look at ancient Hebrew or ancient maps and stuff like that, you can see that it looks like the Earth is like a dome, flat, whatever, right? So. Another talk for another time, but the next slide, you're going to see the trees and our relationship with trees. Okay, in ancient text, again, that's slide 5. It talks about in ancient text in Psalms 1, it says, he that meditates on the word day and night will be like a tree planted by rivers of water. So even mankind has been likened to trees. And it's amazing, right? You can see how, maybe we'll touch on that another time, but
this is fun stuff to talk about around the campfire, right?
And so I like this next slide, slide 6. We also have to recognize that just like the ring circle that I showed you, that's similar to the tree ring circles, and the way this electromagnetic, this biofield that we're surrounded with, and it's basically, it also determines the age, and it also energetically can imprint emotions and traumas and stuff like that. this slide 6, I picked this up from one of those YouTube things I was listening to years ago. But I like the idea that there's that center core there, and then as you go out, you see, my point is right now a lot of us are in this comfort zone, and when you're stuck in this comfort zone, you're preventing yourself from having to expand. So guess what? You do need to get out.
It's funny that it's a tree, again, encapsulating more hidden knowledge.
Right. We all, whether we see it or not, we are way too comfortable. Even the people out there that say that they want to, they're so attracted to, the doomsday, whatever, let's go and survive and let's do survival, let's prep this
Survival.
and that. The thing is,
It's funny.
like, it takes work to do that, right? So are we even like willing to do the work? Are you willing to step outside of your comfort zone and actually go out? A lot of us were entertained through YouTube and all these whatever, right? But then when it's time for action, we don't want to leave this comfort zone. But guess what? When you leave that comfort zone, that's when learning starts.
Growth comes with adversity, right?
Yes.
Hardship is it's just like a sword, right? How does a sword get forged? You got to put it through fire. You got to bang it with a hammer, fold it 1,000,000 times, put it back in cold water, heat it up again to have a very strong steel that'll cut through things, right? Like, that's the same analogy for what we're talking about. Like, that's adversity is what makes you strong.
And guess what? When you're learning and you're experiencing adversity, you're going to come across truth that's going to hit you right in the head, and that's going to probably cause panic, is my point. So stress and panic is absolutely necessary to strengthen you. Even the cells, even the body is designed to experience cells for growth, okay? When you are having a fever, you have no idea how many millions of cells are dying. Okay, the body raised your temperature up to kill things. Why? So that rebirth or regrowth can take place. So it's the same thing. So guess what? You can expect, it's not rainbows and unicorns like you say. When you go out there outside of your comfort zone, you're starting to do the learning thing, you can expect some panic, but you persevere.
But even dealing with the stress, your cells at the time get stressed, but you're training them to deal with stress at the same time. So in future situations, you're not stressed every time. You're less stressed because you've been exposed to that stress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. And just remember that we are beautifully designed. We are, if you look at slide 7, okay, so if you look at your cells, the way we're designed is we are literally designed to resonate. Beautiful sound. So if you look at the cell, so you're seeing a picture of a cell there, right? You're seeing a picture of eyes. You're seeing a picture of like a womb from a pregnant woman, right? Even look at the stars, look at the stars. It has this circular shape,
They're all circles,
right? And I know, contrary to mostly how people draw stars, if you really pay attention to stars, they're actually perfectly spherical and circle. So what is like, and I also mentioned we're musical beings, right? And what happens is when you're healthy, we even use the terms, sound health, right? Mm-hmm. People who are, healthy have sound health, let's say. And the second we go off tune, right? So we're musical beings. The second we go off tune, some people experience being nauseous, right? Oh, you feel off. Okay. So nausea comes from the word noise.
Yeah.
Okay. So meaning if there's a misbalance inside the human body, the cells need to be able to move on and survive despite of the noise that's going on in some areas of the body or the cells. So then anyway, the body gets into protective mode. It creates these protective mechanisms. Anyway, point is, I want to highlight that part of our retreat, we do have these domes. Okay.
Just on that, since we're talking about sounds,
Yeah.
talking about frequencies in nature, everything happens effortlessly in nature, right? But everything gets done. But there's a frequency that activates different things I've noticed. So like, for example, right now you go into the bush, the frogs come out and they start the spring peepers. They're singing. Those are the kinds of harmonics that trigger the growth of the plant life and everything in the spring. The birds, all these harmony sounds, they're for us, they're for all the beings, and for the plants, this symphony of peace, right, is literally what, I don't know how you'd say that, like, it resonates the cells and everything.
Yes.
So there is something to that, and same with the shamanic. If you hear shamans and the drums and these sounds that the First Nations used to use in their sacred ceremonies and in their daily lives, even the smells, they all have healing properties. So, but sound is a big one.
So you said the word resonance, and I've mentioned that a couple times. Yeah. We also talked about relationships. So resonance really comes from like another way to understand it is resound. So again, returning to what it's supposed to be, this harmonious, sound that we're supposed to be vibrating in and, emitting and receiving. So talking a little bit about dome and how that's analogous to our structure within, and how does a dome shape structure compare to a rectangular shape structure, and how does sound move? Okay, so Drew, thank you so much for being awesome. And if you could go to the YouTube video, and we're gonna play a little bit of a clip from this guy who basically shows how sound moves on a dome versus a rectangular shape. So if I'm going to play it right now, or okay, no problem.
Don't you hate that? They've been bad.
Totally okay.
Yeah, do you want to play it on your laptop?
Absolutely. So I'm going to play it right now. And Jay, you've got it. It's at 2:07, and you're going to see here. I'll turn it so that Jay can see it. Okay. So I'm going to turn it, and Drew's going to have this projected on the screen there.
Yeah, let's just watch yours.
It's like, do you notice how the dome has the ability to redirect, and it amplifies sound? Okay. And I'll share. So that's just a short clip right there.
369.
I saw that shape, the snail shape there in the dome when it was going.
Did
by.
you?
I did. I noticed that.
Oh, I love that.
It's funny. I heard
so
that.
It's like,
I've heard this about the cathedrals, and where they had the big organs and stuff, and they studied. You hear about people getting healed in these these cathedrals and stuff.
yeah.
And there was a study done on this. I don't remember where, but it was really interesting. It was just like this. And it's now that you mention it, they talked about the ceilings in these places are dome shape, and the way that the harmonics and these sounds and even the organs.
So I'll touch on the healing, okay? But you just helped me remember. So if you can find this video on YouTube,
Interesting.
You'll see a singer standing in front of a dome-shaped church, and it's just one individual voice that's being projected. But the way this person sings at first, like I was saying, it has the ability to redirect that sound from the way you saw from one side to the next, and then amplifies it. So this one person singing, at some point, it'll actually sound as if there's three voices.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a duet, like a choir singing. Beautiful. Can you imagine being in that structure? Imagine multiple people singing and having that echo, and it sounds as if And we're talking not just echo, we're talking different notes.
And it's the circle, like the dome shape has strength compared. Plus, there's no flat edges, right? Like if you have a flat edge, sound gets absorbed and separates. When you got a round edge, it like it showed in the video.
Well, Drew's the expert when it comes to sound there. So
right? Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Even to study microphones and stuff. But like theirs is really interesting. It's like a really ancient place. And it is in Greece, I believe, or the Mediterranean island of Malta. Okay, so this is known as the hypogeum of Homestead in Neolithic subterranean prehistoric structure dating 3,300, 3,000 BC. So it's in Malta, okay? And it's simply referred to as the hypogeum, and it literally means underground in Greek. Okay, so this slide will show you what it looks like. This has been preserved for and is 6,000 years old. Apparently, it's an underground burial chamber in Malta. Oh, yeah. So what happens is in the middle level of this structure, in the middle level is the most ornate known because it's called the oracle room. So this one has a chamber where the walls create amplified and echoing acoustic effects. Do you know why? Because it's shaped as a dome and it's considered the Holy of Holies. So a lot of people come here and, want to feel this amplified, perfect resonance. So the next slide highlights, this is slide 10. So you'll see a little bit of a different view of where this dome shape is, right? So this oracle room, it's actually frequented by religious leaders. And what's interesting about this is the roof of this is painted in spiraling red paint. And the red color apparently helps reach that perfect resonance. So when that perfect resonating chamber, which is 110 hertz, I think someone had measured it, the dimension of the space is an exact multiple of the wavelength of that frequency. And so when the two waves are in perfect sync like this, natural form of amplification, constructive interference, or standing wave, basically it opens up the third eye or the gateway to Door's perception. So scientists, researchers, they like to bring their equipments in here and produce sounds in this room and records it and, bring it home with them. And there's a YouTube video that actually talks about how this man had plugged in all the frequency that he recorded from this chamber, and he mathematically worked on converted it into something that was visual.
That's so interesting.
And you can actually see, and Drew, if you go to, it's all the way at the very end. So slide 48.
Can I say something before we?
Absolutely.
Interesting. I just thought of this too. You know about lasers? So lasers are light.
Yes.
Right? And have you heard of a blue laser is powerful and it burns things, right? But if you have Egyptian blue, it doesn't burn because of the frequency of that color.
Cancels out.
It cancels out.
Makes sense.
I never knew that, but I learned that in the last couple of years.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, whatever. But if you go on YouTube and some of these, they show you the science behind it.
Right.
So it's interesting. The color has a frequency. The light has a frequency.
Absolutely.
So there's something to all of what you're saying here.
Well, I think it's super
Very
interesting. Super interesting that the color red is what amps up the sound frequenity.
And red light comes from fire that we were talking about too, right? We talk about the light.
Right.
So vitamin D in the winter, but it isn't really vitamin D.
It's retinol A, yeah.
Retinol A, yeah.
So the point is what this chamber produces, the sound wave, the sound frequency that's amped up in this chamber, and why religious leaders like to visit this place is because it literally heightens their brain. It helps their brain to reach a state of gamma brainwave and you really literally, I guess, get in that state of psychedelic.
The shamans and the First Nations, their sweat lodges, like we're going to be recreating some at some of our retreat events, they're shaped in a dome too.
Yeah.
Come to think of it. Like
absolutely.
And it's not a coincidence. Like there's something to all of this stuff.
So the slide, I think, thank you, Drew, for having the slide there up now. So for everyone to see, again, just recapping. So the scientist that came and recorded the sound waves that was able to be produced and amped up in this chamber in Malta, he took the recording of this frequency and he has a computer program that basically turns it into something structural. And look at some of the pictures that I picked up, what the sound frequency would convert to from a visual perspective.
Wow.
Look at, so okay. So now I know I'm going to say something that's kind of weird, but we have all these ancient structures from thousands of years ago that we can't replicate in modern times. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Drew.
Don't start with
okay, but like how in the world were they able to produce these structures?
Tartaria.
Oh, could it have something to do with sound? But obviously, look at the beauty. Look at the structure. Can you imagine? Like our homes are pretty, okay, I'm going to say it, boring. No? Like
they built
the
that
rectangular
back then with no
shape.
Tools, but
like,
today we have them and
do
we
you
can't do
know
nothing.
that it's harder to actually build? And of course, we don't know. I'm not a builder, but I just heard this. Okay, so I'm just repeating it. But like, it's harder to build the edges of structured, like rectangular shaped homes versus, and this is like dome shaped structures, right? It's sturdier. Buckminster Fuller is the godfather of architect. And he was the one who was saying sustainable living. Why don't we all live in?
Same with earthship homes.
Right.
Why are our homes above ground, not below ground? You wouldn't need heat source. You wouldn't need, because they stay at a.
Oh,
that's another rabbit hole. But there's no money in that, Sue.
But just imagine,
we gotta
though.
make money.
Imagine instead of a templated builder approach where someone or an organization is dictating.
No thinking allowed.
Dictating.
We don't want you to be free.
I can't help it.
Stop.
So dictating the how our homes are designed. What if? And again, I highlight Malta, but think about, again, I'm going to draw it back to the inside of us. Like if you study the way our brain is designed, the way our heart is, and even your diaphragm. Have you ever looked at what a diaphragm looks like? Have you, Drew? You can Google it. Looks like I wonder, I'm going to wait, drum roll. He's probably going to highlight this on the video, but yeah, he's going to look at it. It's a dome shaped. Look at that. You see that diaphragmatic muscle? It's a dome shaped. Oh, and when we sing again, what do we use? We're supposed to be using the diaphragm. Again, I don't know, but
the answers are in plain sight.
Today's singers are throat singers, but hey, that's the trending sound nowadays. But my point is, imagine we're using our unique sound coming from within us. Imagine,
which has vibration and power, right? Frequency.
Well, yeah, just imagine if we knew how to amplify. We put ourselves in a dome structure. Let's say we don't have to travel to the Mediterranean island of Malta. What if you come to our retreat and we'll test this dome idea? And like, why don't we produce sound? And imagine we could record the frequency of the sounds we uniquely are able to produce, and we put it into a computer program, and then we design your home like this. Can you imagine? Like, hey, Drew, welcome to my house. Did you know that this house is formed or engineered or structured after a design that I produced when I made a sound, when I sang? And contrary to most what people believe, we are all singers, okay? there are some cultures out there that don't even have a word for singers. It doesn't even exist in their vocabulary. Why? Because everybody sings. The idea and concept of, oh, you're a musician or a singer?
Putting a label on something, right?
We all sing.
Yeah.
You know, and I was talking to a client. I love it because I didn't even know this, but he says, you know, did you know that some cultures believe that the first thing that we did was sing?
We all have a song. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And you know what? It's interesting because, again, I know I'm going to plug it in here, but like in the scripture, it's called, we're going to be given a new song. I don't know if you've heard of that. So if you look at Revelation, you'll see it there. I think it's Revelation 13. There's this group of special people and they're going to be given a new song, it says. So that means it implies that there was an old song that had to be done away with. And guess what? In Hebrew, I like the word. If you look at the word song in Hebrew, it's sure. Okay, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's sure. And what does that mean? Journey. So it literally means at some point in the end, when everything's renewed in Revelation, whatever, we're going to be given a new journey. So there's no such thing as end. So
and
for
Revelation doesn't mean end.
No,
Go
exactly.
to the word and break it down, Sue.
It's not. There's no such thing as end of the world. I'm sorry to break that to you.
What does Revelation mean?
It's the unveiling. That's what it means.
Right.
So imagine a theater with the curtains that's,
opened,
closed. So the unveiling, literally, it will,
all
the future
revealed.
Unveils the new. So anyway, we have really gone into some crazy
some pretty cool stuff
today,
going on at Harmony Homestead, right?
Drew, so this is what you can expect.
We're going to need more
any
parking.
questions, or if you want to make a comment or whatever, or if you want to learn more about some of the stuff that we've
Nobody's going to want to
presented to your awareness today, happy to chat more. But again, Jay, it's always been a pleasure, even though we didn't know what we were going to talk about today. See?
No plans, we just talk.
Right?
You figured it out.
Do what I do
so
best,
much
right?
to talk about. You guys figured it out.
Right?
Yeah, awesome.
And thank you to both of your guidance, yours and Tristan, because we were like, the very first time we did this, it's like, what do we do? What do we talk? Whatever. But it just flowed. Yeah. And literally a client this morning says, just suggested the idea, why don't you guys talk about relationship? And I'm like, maybe I'll do that. And then literally 10 minutes to get here, Jay's like, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I think we're going to talk about relationships.
But we always just flow and find whatever. That's
Right.
That's what's interesting about us. We just get a topic and we start going down these interesting,
beautiful
discussions right?
Yeah, everything's very interesting and eye-opening, I find. So there's lots to talk about, lots to everything you talk about. I'm sure you could. Each specific topic, you could go so deep into that.
That's why I like getting other people involved and talking about this, because it makes it even more interesting, right?
Right, Drew? You heard some of the stuff that we brought to your attention?
Oh, for sure. It's definitely some stuff I never heard before. Some that I've heard a
on?
little of, but never really put too much thought or learned too much. But it's interesting how much of it is all interconnected. So
huge! Oh my gosh, we could definitely.
We'll have to get you and your
hours.
girlfriend out there.
Yeah. On a podcast.
You got to come see the domes.
No, I'm looking forward to when all that's done, because
we'll get you out there soon. Actually,
we'll definitely do cover some content for that, because you guys are gonna have a lot to.
We were gonna talk to you guys about that.
Yeah. Absolutely,
it's only 10 minutes from here, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Lizard's close.
We're practically neighbors.
Yeah,
we are.
Anyway,
we're interconnected.
Thank you, Jay. Any other last words or whatever before we end our podcast?
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for joining us
again. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.
Have a good weekend.
Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right.
Cut.
Nice.